Welcome to Leadership and Motherhood, the podcast for ambitious, high-achieving women navigating leadership in the boardroom and at home. I'm your host, Leanna Laskey McGrath, business leader, mom, and certified executive coach. I believe that every woman deserves to create a life and career on her own terms, one that she truly loves. This podcast is here to help you do just that. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation with two of my dear friends, Annemieke and Andrea. They've been on the show before, so when you're finished with this one, I would highly encourage you to go listen to their other episodes. These are two women who inspire me and who I just love talking to. So I texted them one day and asked them if we could just have a chat about leadership and motherhood without a concrete agenda, just three mom friends talking about this. And it, of course, ended up being a beautiful and impactful conversation that I am so excited for you to hear. We have known each other for over 10 years now when we were all tech executives together, and Annemieke and Andrea go way back even before that. Now we're all in a very similar stage of life, parenting young children, but we're each doing things a little bit differently with our careers at this moment. And I think that that's a really important thing to point out, that career journeys can bend and flex, and they don't have to be linear, straight up the ladder paths. And I think that the three of us kind of embody that. We can design our careers in whatever way works best for us and our values and our families. I know that things that we talk about are going to hit home and resonate with you. And I also hope that this conversation inspires you to get yourself some badass women in your life and to talk about the real stuff, to dig deeper and have real, genuine conversations. There's just nothing like a real conversation with a real friend. I am so grateful to have these two women in my life and call them my friends. I really, really hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed creating it. I am so excited for this conversation. I am talking with two of my dear friends who I worked with a decade ago. We just realized it was a whole decade ago that we crossed paths in the ed tech world. And I wanted to bring them on because whenever the three of us talk, magic happens. So we've got Annemieke Rice and Andrea Palmer here. If you ladies could just start off and tell us a little bit about you so everyone knows who we're talking to.
Hi, my name's Andrea. I met Leanna about 10 years ago in ed tech, which has been my career for, it was about 15 years. I rose to the VP level. I was mostly at early stage companies, but had been through multiple corporate transactions, different mergers and acquisitions. And then in 2023, I had my daughter. I worked part-time until I essentially left the paid workforce. I did a kind of fractional consulting gig for about 6 months, and then I'm full-time at home now.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea.
My name's Annemieke, and I also worked in ed tech for 20 years or so now. I'm still working in the startup world, now in product, but previously in customer success. Like Andrea and Leanna, I have two little girls at home. They each have one little girl at home, but I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I have also stopped work for a while, part-time work for a while, and am now full-time working with both those kids at home.
Amazing. One of the things that is interesting about our experiences is we have all been moms while working at a company full-time. We've all taken a career pause at some point. Andrea's on one now. Annemieke had one. I had one. And so we've have this variety of experiences with how we work and how we parent. And so I think that's really interesting. And also I think one of my least favorite battles of working mom versus stay-at-home mom. I don't know. I would love to hear from you too. For me, both are so not easy. When I left corporate and started being a full-time mom, I wasn't like, oh God, thank God this is so much easier because my daughter was 2 at the time, and that's not an easy phase. Some days I thought, man, it'd be so much easier to be making decisions, running a company again. And I'd love to hear about it from both of you.
Oh my gosh, I think being at home is so much harder. Sometimes I think I have two jobs now, and one of them I'm qualified for, and the other I am not. And that is definitely being a full-time childcare provider. So, although I love it, I love doing both. I think doing both makes me better at each in different ways. But I routinely say that like the hardest part of my day has happened before I have logged on for work. And that part is like doing daycare drop off or dealing with whether the sneakers that we want to be wearing that day are appropriate for the rain or the snow or whatever it is. I love the perspective that doing both gives me, but it's also a huge challenge trying to juggle both of them and feel like I'm getting everything I want out of both phases all the time.
Obviously, they're both really hard. And, there's moments when I feel both at the same time where I'm like, motherhood is the greatest gift, but also marriage and motherhood is meant to oppress women. And, like I want people to just listen to me again, like they did when I was, in a leadership position in the office. My dog doesn't even listen to me anymore. So no, they're certainly both hard, but I find that I'm grateful for and do a much better job being a mom because I can focus on it completely at this young age and I don't feel torn across so many different priorities or deadlines, or even just, when I was working part-time, having to be back from drop off at 10 a.m. for a hard start meeting, just creates a lot of additional stress trying to juggle both. So I'm grateful to be able to have space for this chapter of my life right now.
Yeah. Yeah, Andrea, I remember we both had this experience. I don't remember if we talked about it, Annemieke, if you felt this or not, but when I did leave corporate, I really had a hard time because I was like, I feel like I'm being a bad feminist. Not many women get to this level at a VP level, an executive level. And so I'm just going to walk away from that. That feels really a slap in the face to all the women who came before me who worked so hard for me to even have the opportunity to be in that position. And I'm just like, yeah, no, thanks. I'm going to peace out for a little bit. So I remember that was something we talked about. Andrea, I'd love to hear your take on that.
I ask myself if I'm being a bad feminist weekly as I examine my life and my decisions and constantly think about what it would be like to go back into the workforce or as opportunities, kind of cross my path a little, deciding if I'm ready to entertain them or not. There's not one right answer. And at the end of the day, I feel like you have to do what's right for you. And I think part of listening to your podcast has reinforced that for me is that I can't be comparing myself to the stay-at-home moms who are, oh, you have to work versus I feel very privileged growing up in a household of two working parents. I'm first gen, one parent staying home wasn't even an option in my family growing up. You can only do what's right for you and what feels right for you. And I think in this time, we'll talk about all that decision making and, weighing it.
I spend a lot of time thinking about just letting myself do what feels right now and not worrying so much about whether that has to be a permanent choice. I let myself think about taking the opportunity to do things later. I don't say no to things. I'm like, right now, this is what I want to do. And maybe next month I'll do something else. And I think that's largely because as a mom, I'm in this age that feels very fleeting. I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they literally transform every week. I'm about to go on a work trip. I will come back and my 1-year-old will feel like a different baby. And I was sniffing her head like a creep this morning because I'm going to get on a plane in 2 days. And I was thinking about how much I'm going to miss her, but I was also thinking about how transformative this experience. I'm going to spend 2 days at a wellness hotel by myself, talking to nobody, going on hikes and doing yoga and eating vegan food. And that's it. That's the one time this year I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to spend 3 days in a room with university presidents and corporate executives punching above my weight from a work perspective. And I'm going to come back super enriched. And then I'm going to lie down on the floor and have 2 kids crawl over me and put away diapers. And both of these things are expanding me in very different directions, but in very meaningful ways. And I think my only goal right now is to just try and enjoy what I have as much as I can and not be distracted by other things. And right now, other things is things like, I think I mentioned this before, like gardening or making stuff from scratch. I'm just choosing what brings me the most joy. And sometimes I think about right now, that is being physically present with my 1 and 4-year-old and not in doing a house project. And that doesn't mean that that's what I'm going to do next year. So I think when I remove the stress of feeling like permanent decision, it's a lot easier to just be decisive and enjoy where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree.
I was going to save this for later. And Leanna, I'm interested in your response to the same question you posed to us. But part of, staying at home and maintaining this choice is having space, right? To do it all. And Annemieke, you don't have a lot of space to do it all. So you have to pick and choose. You have to be more regimented about it all. I think mental health and wellness is a top output for me. The original question is how motherhood makes you a better leader. And I think staying home with my child at this stage has improved my mental health to a point where I will be a better leader when I go back. And I think if you look at any leaders that you've had in your life, if they've been good ones, they probably are in a good state mentally, right? And we took a trip to Sedona and I had a Reiki session, which I'd never done. And the practitioner was, called to draw a tarot card for me, which I think they wouldn't typically do. But the card couldn't have been more perfect. And I wrote it down in case it came up, but Annemieke, it feels perfect here. It was life's purpose. And it said, the purpose of your life is to serve in a way that brings you joy to yourself and others. Don't worry about finding your purpose. Instead, focus upon serving a purpose, and then your purpose will serve you. And I was like, ah. But I needed to hear. And I feel like that is the point. We don't have to be making these permanent decisions. We just have to do what feels right in the moment and what brings us joy. And hopefully that radiates to both our home life and our work life.
Yeah.
I think, though, what you said about the feminism is we both worked for over a decade to get to the point. Andrea can enter the workforce whenever she wants. I stepped out and stepped back in very quickly. I think there might have been other phases of my life where I felt like that choice could have had more permanent consequences. And right now, I do feel like, to a degree, I want to reap the rewards of what I invested in myself. I am worth something. My time is worth something for me. I might not be not working, but let me tell you, I do not work more than a 40-hour work week as an executive. And that was not the case when I was an executive a decade ago. And I'm kind of in a take it or leave it state with my time with the companies that I work for or with, which is, if you need more from me, then I'm not the right person from you, because I am not selling my personal time right now for any amount of money. And that wouldn't be because the job wasn't worth it. But this phase of my life, I am more interested in going to the gym every day than I am punching up from a corporate perspective. So I think there's still an element of I'm choosing to do not work things with my time right now. And that feels like a feminist, I am putting myself above everything right now. And that feels like the most feminist thing.
I think that is a similarity that we are all doing, right? I'm doing that with my business. Andrea, you're doing that by spending time with your daughter full time. Annemieke, you're doing that in your work setup and in setting those boundaries. And I do think that that is true feminism. And that was really where I landed. Andrea, you said about, asking me the question. That was where I landed, as I was like, I think I'm being a bad feminist by doing something I don't want to do because I believe that's what's expected of me. That is not feminism, right? In my opinion, I think feminism is that we get to put ourselves first, that we get to do what's right for us. And for some of us, that is working full time. Some of us, that is working part time. For some of us, that's fractional. Some of us, that's not doing paid work. It's there's not a one size fits all. And I think, to your point, Annemieke, it's you just have to constantly be asking yourself that question of what brings me joy right now in this season. Because when I stepped out of the paid workforce, corporate world, I did not have any kind of thoughts about that it was permanent. I remember saying I can go back anytime. My skills are always going to be needed in the workforce. And also, I felt like missing out on a few years of my career was a very low risk compared to missing out on my daughter's childhood, that time before she started school. I just felt like I really wanted to, for me, that felt really important to spend that time with her and in an uninterrupted kind of way. And I think also, to your point, Andrea, I did so much self-development work, and I continue to as well. But I continue to have a babysitter just so I could go to therapy and coaching and do journaling and reflection and yoga and things like that, because I needed that time for myself. And I continue to need that time for myself. And I think we all need that time for ourselves. But I had a really hard time setting those boundaries when I was a corporate executive with a newborn. And I love that you're doing that now, Annemieke.
I think being at home full time is what helped me realize, like, what is the feeling you get when you're not rushing to or from something with my kids? And so I remember what it feels like to cook a meal and focus on it, or to spend time with the kids and not be on a timeline. I know it's possible. And so even when I'm working, even yesterday or Monday, my kid, I had to pick her up from daycare. She was supposedly sick. She was not. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to cancel the rest of my afternoon and hang out with my baby. Like, this is a gift. It is an inconvenience, but I can frame it as a gift. I'm going to lose the same amount of time, whether I'm upset about it or present. And I don't know that I would have remembered what that could feel like if I hadn't done it myself. Like, known what it was like not to have work over your head, or known what it was like to leave the workforce and come back and not be afraid of that.
Yeah.
It does make me feel like so much less scared, and I will work harder to get back to the mindset of just being with my kids. And I think that was a huge gift. Even though I didn't actually love being home full time with my daughter, it was actually really hard for me mental health wise at that stage for that child. I think maybe different kids, different stages. I do still feel like I get to choose.
Yeah. Well, I remember when you went back to work after your career pause, and you had taken, I want to say, like 6 months or so with your first. And when you went back, there was some fear, like there was some real fear of like not honoring your boundaries, sliding back into the overworking kind of tendencies that you had before, that we all three have had before. So what was that experience like when you did go back, and how do you continue to? Has it always been as easy as it is right now for you to hold those boundaries, or has that been a work in progress?
You know, it has always been easy. And I think it's the combination of three things. One is like, literally, this age of children are truly all consuming. I cannot look at my phone and parent my kids. It's just not an option. And I am totally exhausted by 8:30 when they go to bed. Like, there's a physical barrier that really helps me. I do think having people outside of my immediate workplace network has been huge. So having the two of you, having others outside of work that keep me grounded and reminding myself of the options, and then my environment, like, not every workplace you can work the way I'm working. And I do feel like it's easier for me to recognize that now. I've even told other moms in this situation who are like, I feel like I have to work all the time. I'm like, you might need a different company. Like,
That's right.
it might not be you. It might be the environment you're in. If it's that hard all the time, like, you don't have to fight. If you're fighting constantly to set your boundaries, you might want to go somewhere else where they're not push so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's always like the individual and what you can do. Right. And there is a lot that goes into that in terms of your mindset and how you value your time and things like that. And that's really important. And also the environment has to be aligned with that, right? There has to be some alignment there, because if you're in an environment where everybody else is working 60 to 70 hours a week, then you start to feel guilty. Like, that's the expectation. You feel like you're not pulling your weight, that kind of thing. I think it is also different when you are, and I know you were recruited, I was as well, when you're into a new job after you have the baby, right? Like, because your perspective changes a bit, and you can be pretty upfront in the interview process about what you can provide, rather than a company that you've worked for a long time, and then suddenly you have to change how you're working, or you want to change how you're working. And they're like, there's just more tension there, because there's the expectations that you have of yourself, of how you work and how much you work. And there's the expectation that everybody else has of you about how available you are, how much, you're showing up in the office and that kind of thing. And that is, I think, more challenging to change.
Yeah. But also, Andrea and I talked about this a little bit when she was thinking about like the last gig that you did, Dre, but which is, my time right now is a culmination of my experiences. So it is highly valuable to an employer.
That's right.
It's really easy for me to be decisive at work right now because I have 20 years of experience doing this. So it's less hours of effort and more literally skill.
Yes.
And so I meet all my deliverables. I exceed all my outcomes. Like, I'm not failing at work. And if I need to get something done, I figure out a way to get it done. But I use my skills as opposed to brute force.
That's right.
In addition, motherhood made me better at my job, literally made me better at my job.
How so?
Empathy is a huge one. I think just relationships is a huge part of my work. I think I'm a much better leader than I used to be. I do think decisiveness is a huge thing. Like being able to take in a huge amount of information in a short amount of time, draw a conclusion. Like there's something about being limited on time that just gets the most out of my brain. It's like that procrastination effect, but all the time. And stress resilience, like the perspective that I get from feeling like this is not the hardest thing I'm going to do today. And that is a combination of my work experience and my motherhood experience. I'm not afraid of 5 hours of sleep. Like that sounds fine. Like there's a certain amount of having had hard life situations at home or in my career that I take better risks. I am less afraid. And I think those are largely valued in businesses, like decisive, confident, innovative, but also empathetic. Those are the things I think are most key. And the same thing when Andrea was like, when you were talking, I'm like, you are worth 4x what you were 20 years ago because of how much experience you bring to the table.
I think that's something we so often forget because we think that what got us here was this like hard work, hours invested, and that is the value that we bring to a company. There was a time in our careers where that was true. And also there's kind of that concept of like what got you here won't get you there. And you don't necessarily need that moving forward because you have other things that you didn't have when you first started out your career, right? You bring different things to the table now. And I think so often we forget that and we are only comparing ourselves to like the pre-parent version of ourselves where we're like, I could work so much more and I could show up and I could be at all the things and I could travel on a moment's notice, just drop everything and go somewhere. And then now that I can't do that anymore, we look at it as kind of like a lack and we forget about all the things we've added to our arsenal from just the years of experience in the field and also from motherhood. Andrea, you said before when you go back, you believe you'll be a better leader. So I'm curious, how so?
Well, I already mentioned, I think just being in a better state of mental health and emotional well-being, which is a factor in the workplace, tempers flare. Ego is a word that comes to my mind. And I didn't mention it before, but I was coming from sales. And I think, everybody has from a Freudian sense, a sense of ego and being able to put that aside to achieve my desired outcomes, right? Like if you're digging your heels in with a toddler, you're not winning, right? So what are other creative approaches to get what you want rather than, like you said, Annemieke, pure brute force, right? That's not going to win in that situation. So being able to put aside my ego to be able to accomplish what I want with different human beings has been helpful. I've also, as the eldest daughter, perfectionist, and I've always known it, but enacting the done is better than perfect. I was forced to do that with a kid, so it doesn't have to be exactly the way I want it, but it's done and we can move on. Things like crisis management and not reacting emotionally to a situation, knowing that if I raise my voice to my 2-year-old, she's only going to get deeper in the hole. So I have to be able to be cool, calm, and collected. And while maybe in the workplace I did that on the outside, on the inside, there was, still turmoil bubbling up that I would have to suppress somehow. But now it's, it feels more zen and natural doing it, I guess.
Yeah.
That point you made about like, I'm focusing on the outcome and not the egoic, like, am I the best in the room or am I the leader? Am I getting the credit? Which is totally natural and part of what drove all of us, I think, to where we were earlier in our careers. That so resonates with me. And I actually remember, Leanna, talking to you when you first left your corporate job for your pause, and you're like, all these things that were making me so, like, that I cared so much about the day before I made that decision, all of a sudden didn't matter as much. And yet I still felt like we could achieve the outcome. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for the day that I stop being driven nuts by these little things that they're fine, but they're not my preference. And I have this phrase in my household, which I use all the time in parenting. Is it a preference or is it a concern? Am I going to voice my opinion? And that's the barometer I use. Like, if there's many ways to do it and my preference is this way, I keep my mouth shut. Not because, unless someone wants my opinion and asks for it. But what's more important is that the person doing the work believes in the way they're going to do it. They're most likely to achieve the outcome. If I have a concern that the outcome will not be met, I will voice it. And so in our household, that's like, wow, how my kid is dressed is a preference, how she's buckled into her car seat is a concern, right? So we speak up about those things, but we keep our mouth shut about clothing matching. And I use that at work and at home all the time.
I love that. I love that because I'm thinking about that in our relationships, right? Like there are definitely times where my husband's doing something. It is not the way I would do it. And it probably didn't get done to the like extremely high level.
Quality of outcome is not the same as if you did it.
Right. Also, firstborn struggles with perfectionism. Yes. But then I have to ask myself, does it bother me enough to go back and redo it all? And so I love that framework that you are suggesting, Annemieke, of like preference or concern. I haven't thought about that, how that applies in the workplace too. I'm sure people enjoy working for someone who thinks that way, because then you're not like micromanaging, you're not getting into their process of how they're doing it, and they're able to take a lot more pride and ownership of the work and the outcomes.
Yeah, I think having to go on leaves while I was working and coming back to the job was really helpful for figuring out my leadership style, my unique value, because like you have to make sure the company still achieves its outcomes, the team is still supported, and then there's this element of like, well, then what is the point of my job if the company everything can get done while I'm gone? But it really always helped me level up I actually think so. This past time, I was able to get a totally new job because I upskilled everyone else in the company so well for my leave that I could do a new thing when I came back, which never would have happened if it wasn't forced into that. And also helped me really realize my unique value. Like, what were the things that really did suffer for lack of my presence? And that has helped me really know my unique differentiating values much better.
I love that. Andrea, I also love what you said about emotional regulation and the importance of that in the workplace. I do think like that's probably the biggest thing that I have learned from motherhood is how to manage myself and keep myself emotionally regulated, because you both know, and Annemieke, I remember you said this whenever we started working together, like I always outwardly appear calm. That's what everyone who works with me tells me, is like, you're so calm all the time, you know? So like when I'm not, everyone knows like, oh, this is a big deal. But I think it's like the internal experience matching the external. I was always able to stay like relative, probably more calm than other people, but still like I didn't necessarily feel like settled, you know, within myself, even though I was kind of presenting as calm. And now I really feel calm. Like I feel like I can manage myself so much better because I have managed so many toddler tantrums. And I have been through the gauntlet on that of like knowing, to your point, Andrea, if I let myself get pulled into this and let myself get escalated, then this is going to last longer. It's going to be worse. I'm going to feel worse afterwards. I'm probably going to end up acting in a way that I'm not proud of. But if I'm able to keep myself calm and regulated, then like this is going to go so much better, right? Like this will probably be over sooner. And also, I won't be hating the experience so much the whole time along the way. So I think that's a huge thing because that is so important in business and just everywhere. Everyone wants a calm person, right?
Relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, for me right now, I know we're talking about motherhood and work, but I feel like my partnership at home, which for me is a husband, is like very, very important. If that falls apart, I feel like it can be very disruptive to everything else. And so there's this element to me also of, I feel like I learn a lot from multiple forums to keep that as functional as it can be. It feels like the most important business I'm in is the one with my partner where we're co-parenting, owning property, project managing, those types of things. And it's probably the one where I have the most honest feedback about what I'm really like. That's the best performance review I get is from my husband. He will tell me things that a manager will not, or even a friend will not, because friends are like always on your side, right? But that's probably the best reflection of my true pros and cons as a person and a mom.
I love that. And I love that perspective of like that it's a business that you're running essentially, right? Like a household really is a household and a home and a mortgage and investments and all the things.
Right. Also, by the way, Andrea is in business. Like she owns property,
Oh,
she
yeah.
manages. Like I feel like sometimes you say that you're unpaid labor. You making money every day, girl. Like this is, and let's not undersell the amount of responsibility you have when you talk about being at home here.
And I do tell myself that when I'm trying to, ramp myself up of the skills I do have, because I love your confidence, Annemieke, and I'm just not there yet, right? I know when I go back into the workforce, I probably will be able to, I have a great network. People know the work that I do, but still there's this, I don't know if it's insecurity or worry about that future and what will happen when I do decide to go back. But when I'm amping myself up, I think I am taking all of the skills that I developed in a business and I'm just applying them at home. I am deeper in my finances and financial planning and budgeting than I have ever been. I find efficiencies in process that we wouldn't have been able to achieve before because you don't have the time or space to focus on it. So, yeah, life, it's not romantic, but life in a way is a business. And having the skills and space to focus on what parts of that business is most important to you is a gift.
Yeah. I love it. I want to go back to Annemieke. You said something at the beginning that I think is a really interesting thought. A thought that a lot of women have who are executives and moms is something like, I don't know how to do both of these, or motherhood takes away my ability to show up as the leader I want to be, or right? Like it's kind of a scarcity or like a zero sum game kind of thing. And I love the thought that you're having. Doing both makes me better at each, because that thought feels so much more expansive and so much more abundant than like a scarcity thought of like, I don't have enough time to do everything I want to do, or I can't show up the way that I used to, or the way that I want to, and that kind of thing. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that idea of that doing both makes you better at each. And I know we're kind of talking about that here, but like, how do you hold that thought, and what does that thought give you, like, of how you show up at both?
I mean, I am a person who likes, I don't know how to say it. Like, I like routines, but I also like variety. So for me, sometimes it is the contradiction of the two modes that makes me take pleasure in them the most. I look forward to my peace and quiet and adult conversation at work, and I look forward to the physicality and joy and laughter of parenting. And so I find the balance of them helps me appreciate them for the positives more often. And I think when I was doing either one 100, I was actually thinking about this today. My husband and I struggled with infertility for over 5 years. And I distinctly remember killing it at work, so to speak, and just coming home at the end of the day to a quiet home and wishing that I had the messiness and drama of kids after work to make me feel more whole. And I think that it's like, I'm never going to not remember that feeling for the rest of my life. It makes me emotional every time I think of it, because we were so close to not having this experience that, to me, I just am always grateful for both of those things. And I remember what it was like to just have one over the other and did not like either of the absolutes. But also, I find that right now with little kids, a lot of the challenges that I have, the scarcity is seasonal. I have enough people in my network who have slightly older children to give me faith that like some of my pain is temporary and also some of my joy is temporary. And so like my daily thing is be where I am, enjoy what I have for what it is. Work could get harder at any minute. I could lose my job at any minute. My kids are growing up by the week. So I'm just trying my best to just enjoy what I have while I have it and not spend so much time worrying about what could happen or what will happen. Because I spend so much time worrying about negative outcomes, and 90% of the time they don't happen. And even if they do, I always came back from it. So I just think that life experience, it has been tantamount to me being present and enjoying both of those things. And also knowing like I can change my mind. I look at the two of you and I'm like, I can go be a contract worker. I can do fractional. I can take a break and go back to work. My husband and I will play imagination games about like maybe when the kids are 4 and 7, we'll just go get an Airbnb somewhere in Spain and like take a break, take a sabbatical. Like, I'm not saying that has to happen, but knowing that we can do those things if we want to. Again, total privilege here, financial stability, family support, co-parent, we're all healthy. These are not things that everyone has. But I really just like the diversity of the feelings through the day.
Yeah.
A while back when Annemieke was talking about wanting to become a parent and not knowing if that would happen or not, which is interesting because I had almost the opposite experience where I would have been perfectly fine not having a kid at all. I was very satisfied, with my free life. And I never would have thought I would have been a stay-at-home parent. But things change. And maybe that's to your point, Annemieke, it's all transient and fluent. And in a way, you have to have that acceptance. And Leanna, I was listening to maybe it was the most recent podcast you did with Namisha. And that really, really resonated with me, of just opening yourself up to the beauty of life the way it is, not always wishing it was different. And I think that's where a lot of my anxiety had come from in the past, was living in the past or worrying about the future. And when you have someone constantly judging you on your goals, your performance, your, XYZ when you're in the workforce, it's hard not to feel like there's always a mirror on you. So taking that away has helped me to just be. And I'm still, almost probably a year and a half later, I'm still deprogramming myself from everything in that rat race of the pressure to perform and faster, smarter, stronger. And, at the core of it, it's probably that feeling of never being enough, no matter what you do. Taking away that stimulus has just made it easier to appreciate the small things and have that joie de vivre and, just live life in a way that feels wholesome and authentic, without all of that extra stimulus. So I guess the original point was just that I would have never thought I would have been a stay-at-home parent. It's kind of the opposite of Annemieke, but we both find ourselves in a very, very happy place, kind of without knowing. And you, Leanna, you kind of always knew that you wanted to raise kids and stay home and kind of work to give yourself that freedom.
So I always knew I wanted to start a business. I started a business when I got pregnant. That was, I think, because I had left a very stressful situation with M&A at tech startups. And I had been trying to get pregnant for 4.5 years, and then did whenever I was, doing my own thing and actually deprogramming and breathing and, and just had a little bit more space. But I had gone into my first tech startup with the goal of, or kind of having in my mind that I wanted the option, because, that when I have kids, to decide what I wanted to do so that I would have that option financially. You're probably referring to, I had a conversation with my now husband. We were 4 months in, and we went for this long walk and talked about what we wanted out of life and that kind of thing. And I had told him, there's a possibility that, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and that's all that I know. And she tried to go back to work and then decided not to. And she told me my whole life, you just wait till you get that baby in your arms. It changes everything. And so to your point about being open, I just wanted to be open to whatever it was that I would want to do with it. And it turned out that when I did have that baby, I did want to keep working, because babies are that's not my favorite phase. But it was more when she started walking and talking and being more interactive that I was I do feel like I'm missing something here. I don't want to miss that part of it, because I really enjoy it. So yeah, I had kind of set myself up and had it in the back of my mind, but I didn't know. I didn't know what I would want once she came.
I think that to me is something, I don't want to categorize myself as one version of work and mom, because I'm you know what? This is not the phase for me to want to do full time. And again, my kids, we all have different kids with different developmental elements of what it's like to be with them 24/7. But mine right now need to be with other people for part of the day. And I look forward to the idea of well, maybe when they're 5 and 8, I'll do a part-time thing, and I'll do a really cool summer experience. Or my mom worked 9 to 3 most of my elementary to middle school time. So she worked in I wish there was more blended options available to people. And I'm somewhat I wish there was more counseling for us early in our careers about what are the personal advantages of different careers. Like if you're a nurse, you can go in and out of that career your whole life, and you can work. I have friends who are doctors, they work 5 days a week, they could work 3 days a week. Now, those jobs are physically grueling in different ways than mine is, but there is an element, I think, sometimes of feeling like it's either all or nothing with careers. And those are the people I think that suffer the most, that they feel like there's only the all or nothing option. And I hope that the new version of feminism and anybodyism is that there is more variability or nuance to what it could look like to earn money for your home and take care of your family and self and home, and to be able to flex that up and down depending on the phase of life. Like, how much am I recovering from a surgery? Do I need to work out a little bit more right now? Do we want to travel? Do we need to save money? Whatever it is.
And I think that's where my brain keeps going, is what world is possible? And we're seeing more things like fractional or consulting gigs. And I know, Leanna, you've kind of encouraged me in seeing that other side, because where I'm at right now, I'm could go back to the workforce, but I feel like right now I don't want to. Not because at home is so great, because yeah, there's a lot of benefits, but it's, I guess, the misogyny that I experienced in the workforce. I think I carry with me like a lowercase t trauma about it. And I haven't been in the right environments that would make me feel like going back would keep me happy, right? I want to work. And I'd love to hear, Annemieke, that you feel you have the confidence and you have the kind of cultural space in your workforce to support this. But in my head, I just keep thinking, it's so hard to have both and be happy in both. And I'd love to see workplaces or work setups where you do have flexibility and support for working parents, not even just moms, right? Because we have to have all sides of the equation to make this even out. But that's where I'm most excited to hear and see things evolve. Because right now, that's a mental blocker for me.
I wish I could promise you the healing workplace experience you deserve, because I definitely can relate to that feeling of like past trauma creating fear. That's how I felt going into the decision to go back to the company I'm at now. I was terrified about how I would feel and how I would handle the boundaries, and then extremely pleasantly surprised by, I had changed, but the environment was very different, and it could change at any minute. And I might not feel this way in a week. I'm not saying that's permanent, and the thing is, in interviews, you can't be sure, right? But I wish I could give that to you so that you knew it was there and it was possible, and could more easily recognize, am I in that environment or not? And can I leave if I need to, if it's not there? And that is the slippery slope, is like, it doesn't change overnight usually. So I think this is where being in tune with your mind and your body is so helpful. Am I feeling signs in my body that this is no longer a good place for me to be? And then do I have the agency to walk away if I need to?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that, Andrea, whenever Annemieke was talking about environment being such a key factor in, being able to enjoy this and do it in a way, work and motherhood, do it in a way that you feel good about. Because I think that your experiences and mine prior to leaving corporate, it's just not a good fit. I loved working in tech startups in my 20s because we worked all the time. It was our whole lives. We literally lived in a house together. We worked, the support phone rang to the phone right beside my bed, and I answered it in the middle of the night. We had a boat, and we would go out every weekend, and we spent all this time together. It was so intense. And we traveled all the time to campuses to visit all of our clients. And so that was like an amazing experience. And I would hate it if I were doing it right now. Like, I don't want to do that at this moment in my life, right? Like, this season calls for something very different. And so I do think that it's so important that we recognize that just different environments and different companies are for different seasons of our lives. And I love like the old school, I worked here for 40 years and retired from there kind of a thing. But like, I don't think that that is really what works best these days, all the time, because we have to find places that align with where we are in our current season of life. And so I share Annemiek's wish for you because I know that these places exist. I intentionally seek out people to come on my podcast to talk about them so that people who, haven't experienced it yet can see that it is possible and it is available. Because I think as we create more workplaces like that, as we believe that it can be that way, then that just makes everything better, right? That makes everything better for everyone, because we're all able to then go and show up and contribute. If you are wanting to work, if you're wanting to bring your skills to somewhere, like, there should be a place for you to do that, because like the world benefits from that. So, that contribution. But I totally also understand about deprogramming the misogyny. I remember I was in a therapy session at one point, and I was like, I feel like I escaped a cult, like this cult of like hustle, hustle. Your value is in how productive you are and how much you work, your hours. And like, I feel like I was brainwashed into believing that is the only way that I could be a valuable person on this planet, was to just like brute force, work my ass off and contribute so much. And, it got me to a great place. But it's kind of like what got you here won't get you there. It did take a lot for me to like deprogram all of that and let go of all of those external expectations and noise to tune into, so that I could hear what it is that I really want, right? To your point, Annemieke, of like seeking, like, in this present moment, what is going to bring me joy? I can't hear that if I'm hearing all that other noise of expectations and just stuff that people think I should be doing and I'm supposed to be doing.
I feel like watching my child react to me or what she values is like the best teacher for me in this phase of life. Of what my kids care about is not whether the wrapping paper out of the tree is color coordinated. It is the little things, and it is the experiences. And even things like, I go to dance class every Wednesday night, and my daughter loves that I go to dance class, and she wants to see the videos of me going to dance class, and she asks me about it. And so there's just like parts of the simplicity of children at this age that I find is like no bullshit to it. Like, you cannot fake it. You cannot trick them. You cannot PR your way into a kid believing something. It is either true or it's not true. And just like the most grounding thing every day. I'm kind of sad that I'm going to lose it one time and they're going to not react that way to everything I do and say. And then it also brings so much laughter into our house that was not present before I had kids. And an emotional regulation standpoint, I'm a full believer, working otherwise, that like, if things are hard, it's not about making them less hard. It's about making other things joyful. Like, it's positivity to balance the negativity, not diminishing negativity, that is important. And that is why I feel the most emotionally regulated. I'm literally giggling for like 30 minutes at least a day. And whether I'm faking it or not, eventually you really laugh. Right. Like, and then it's just, you come from a full cup place, even if I'm tired, even if it was stressful.
Yeah.
The best way to get a toddler to do something is to make them laugh and make it into a game. So
that's right. Not brute force. Yeah, to your point. Yeah. Yeah, I do think so. Having a 7-year-old, it's so interesting because it is holding up a mirror, right? Like, seeing as they react to the world, as they react to their own emotion, any stimulus, you're like, ooh, that's me, like, for better or worse. Because sometimes you're like, okay, I got to clean that up because see what she's picking up on here. Or other times, you can feel like so good because you're like, oh, I taught her that, and I taught myself that in this process. It's not something that I like knew before. And I learned that. And I'm so proud that I could pass that along, because that's going to set her up for success so much better.
I think that every time I interact with either of your girls, I'm like, this is so cool that I see these bits and pieces that Andrea has put into Teddy or that Leanna has put into Adela. It's like the absolute most wonderful thing to see parts of your values and who you are in these little humans that they then take on, like the most beautiful.
And I think as I've kind of grappled with this thought of like, am I being a bad feminist? I've kind of fallen into the flavor of the value of maternal feminism and mothering being a foundational societal act in creating the humans of tomorrow. And I just would love to see a way in the future that we transcribe that into the workplace, where they appreciate the soft skills that we've been talking about, of how we have become better leaders because of our motherhood experience. And I just right now, not to be negative about it, but all of these things are absolutely wonderful. Yes, we'll be better managers, but is the person making the decision still going to be thinking, yeah, but you're not going to get on the plane when I need you to, right? You're not going to be available for me at 8 p.m. like I want you to. So how do we change the conversation over time? Is it more women in leadership?
Yes, more women in leadership for sure. Because I was going to say the person with the judgment there holds the power, obviously. Sure, they can be influenced to some degree, positively or negatively, but it's huge. Like being in a room, even just all genders of people who they don't have a stay-at-home partner really changes that's what it is for me. It's less like, am I working for a woman, and more what percentage of people in leadership have a 2 working household of some kind, or have had that of some kind, because they understand trade-offs and realities and phases and efficiencies. Even if it was 10 years ago, we can probably influence people who haven't been there, but you need at least a majority of the people in the room to come from a place of not just like, it's okay, let's give them a pass, but how I feel, which is I'm actually going to get more and better out of that person because of emotional regulation, because of all these other things. So I don't care if they aren't going to get on a plane on Friday.
That's right.
Well, I have a different list of interview questions for my next employer after this call.
Good. I hope so. And I do think, it is up to the person about what they value. And I think that that's what's great. We have lots of different companies out there and lots of options for where we can work. And some of them value what we bring and some of them don't. And, we get to decide where we share our skills. So we could talk for like another hour or two, I'm sure, but I know we're getting to the end of our time. So I want to wrap up. Just I would love to hear from each of you, just any final thoughts that you have that you want to kind of sign off on.
I just think it's very helpful to hear other people's experiences, whether it's to make your own decisions or to just hear that there's not one right way. I was hemming and hawing about if I wanted to leave the workforce, and now I'm so glad that I did. And hearing the people who come on your podcast and just knowing I'm already thinking that, I'm already feeling that. It's a shared experience rather than isolating, which I think oftentimes motherhood can be isolating. So bringing it together and sharing stories and knowing that our experiences might be different, but there is kind of a universality about it. I don't know, it just kind of helps me feel more confident and happy about it all.
For me, I think there is more than one way to be happy. There is more than one way to contribute to society. And so sometimes we're in complete control and we just make a choice, like option A, option B, which do you want to do? That's not normally how it goes. Normally things happen to us and we make the most of those situations. And what I hear in Andrea's story, in my story, and Leanna's story is a lot of like bringing value to whatever situation we're in, making the best choices based on where we're at and adjusting as we go. I think if I lost my job tomorrow, I would make the most out of being a stay-at-home parent, and I would have a very different life, and I would still be happy, and I would still be building skills. And so I think for me, it's like it's a false dichotomy that it's one or the other, or that it's a permanent choice, and that we are suited to one or the other as an identity element. And I think it does help to hear other people's stories and to have relationships with others who are in different phases of life, to recognize that and to know that for me, I know that it will be fine. I will be fine. And that I can try many things in my life. Like I am probably more at the phase of life is short. So what other experiences do I want to have before I'm too old for change? And so maybe I do want to try a different career. Maybe I do want to learn a new language or a new skill. Maybe I do want to take a break from work. But I do think for people to recognize some things you can control and some things you can't. Do not blame yourself for the things you cannot control. It is not a lack of discipline. It is not a lack of boundary setting. No amount of journaling is going to change the fact that you're in an environment that is completely overwhelming your emotional resilience. Put your energy where it's returned to you, if you can.
Yeah. This has been so lovely. I appreciate both of you so much for your friendship and for coming on today. And I totally agree with, both of you talked about just like hearing other women's stories. And so I love being able to talk to both of you and hear what's going on for you and what your experience is like, since we've all had similar experiences, but different, and we have different takes on things. So I love it. So I appreciate you both so much. Thank you for being here.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you all next week. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to Leadership and Motherhood. I genuinely hope you're walking away with something helpful that will positively impact your life. If this podcast resonates with you, it would mean the world to me if you'd support the show by leaving a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, sharing an episode you loved with someone you care about, and/or by following the show. I hope you'll join me again next week, and until then, I'm wishing you all the best in this season of your one and only precious life.